Hi, everybody. Mike White here. Welcome to this week's blog post. We're zooming right through February, and activity has really picked up. Things are very positive. The pre-approvals, the people inquiring, people coming back, people making offers, contracts being accepted. And I know this is not, countrywide, and I know it's not for every originator, but the people that I'm working with, um, across the board are seeing higher levels of activity, and it's solid activity. It's good activity, and again, we're seeing significant interest from those people who are going to be selling a house to buy a house, and they're very excited about the process and finding out things are not as bad or as bleak as they had once thought. We're also seeing a lot of people coming back into the market who were using loan products like FHA, VA, USDA, bond program loans. We're seeing sellers concessions, all of those wonderful things that we had a few years ago that made the market, move forward. And yes, it's not as active as it was during the peak of the mortgage boom when we had 2% interest rates. But all things considered, we're back to a much more normalized housing market, and that's very positive for those of us, who are focusing on that particular part of the business. And we're even seeing people pick up significant market share in their markets because they are doing a great job. They are involved and they are making things happen. So we've been going through this process recently, through the steps that we talked about. And this is, step number 2. And I called it, if you remember, tools of the game. And all the time I get asked from loan originators and companies, what are the best tools that you can have? What works best for certain tasks? And to be honest, I use one line that I've heard many years ago. It still functions today very well, so I continue to use it. The information and the tools that you see in our market, everything works and nothing doesn't. And simply put, it just means, whatever the plan may be, you've got to work the plan and you've got to adjust based upon what you're seeing. And technology, as wonderful as it is, I think the big issue has been that too many companies, too many loan officers, too many managers are relying on technology and not the individual. Again, using technology as the thrust behind the result, as opposed to using the person and having them use the tool. Because technology, quite simply, is not going to be the driver of business. Technology is going to be the tool, and we're seeing that right now. You look at the layoffs, you look at the companies that are shutting down, you look at the people that are in trouble in the mortgage industry, and you're seeing it's not business that was ever built on personal relationships, personal referrals, personal professionalism, and having perfected the process that takes the client forward. Yes, generating interest is important, but so much weight has been put on generating a click or an opportunity just to speak to somebody, as opposed to being an attraction, being the thing that attracts business, being the thing that attracts the client that you want. And so what I like to say when it comes to the whole technology thing, to me, somebody who wants to lose weight, they go out and they buy a treadmill. Well, that treadmill sitting in the bedroom covered in clothes doesn't help people get in shape. In fact, I think that treadmill sitting in the bedroom covered in clothes actually leads to worsening of the situation. They've got it sitting there, and now they have resentment over the fact they spent the money to buy the treadmill and they haven't personally committed to doing the work themselves. And I think that's where the big hole in many of the origination systems that are out there is, that the fact that companies go out there and they get these tools, and they have the best intentions, because there are many great tools out there, and I've seen them, and all to themselves, they work really, really well. They do really great things. But the point is, we're the people who are using the tools, trained on how to use the tools, and what are they held accountable to mastering the tool? Did they have to, use the tool repeatedly until they could do it? Because I've seen some of these tools, and they got to be downloaded. You got to learn how to use it. It takes a while. It's a little uncomfortable. You're not sure where everything's laid out, and it's like, well, this takes me an hour to do, and the reality is, after 25 or 30 times of having done it, you're knocking these things out in 3 to 5 minutes like it's nothing, and it really enhances the overall process. But you never get to the mastery of the tool where you take it down from the initial clunky learning stage into the mastery stage where you're mastering that tool. Because again, tools are not going to work by themselves. And so one of the key components that I put out there for managers and loan officers and company owners is really understanding and having a plan of what the tool is for. And so I just asked some simple questions, which says, does the user know how to fully use the tool? And despite these companies who sell these tools having huge support systems, nobody holds the individual user accountable to mastering the tool. Can that person who's been shown the tool achieve the best results for having used it? And again, so many technologies, especially technology companies, come back to me and say, we have these tools and we have people buy into using these tools, but they use 5% or 10% of the capability of the tool. And the challenge with that is because they probably don't know the rest of it exists, or they don't see the benefit in learning it. And whose challenge is that? Well, it would be nice to believe that the user would expand their horizons and look for every last ounce of benefit out of the tool. But you and I both know that that's not likely to happen. The other thing about tools is, does it integrate? I see companies out there and they have 3 or 4 tools, and a new client comes in or something comes in, and these tools don't speak to each other. They don't integrate with each other. So the people involved in this process are entering and re-entering the same information over and over and over again. And finally, what happens? You're supposed to have these tools that integrate, and somewhere along the line, it doesn't get entered in 2 or 3 spots. And that client either doesn't have the same experience, or the follow-up process isn't the same because they didn't get entered into a system, or they didn't get into the schedule, or it wasn't tasked for follow-up, or whatever the case may be. It is really a challenge when these things don't integrate. And last but not least is the person who's using the tool. Can they explain to somebody else how and why they're using that tool? Because again, like anything else, if you can't explain the how and why behind the use of the tool, you probably don't know all of the features and benefits of that tool yourself. So again, it's one of these things where I look at this stuff, and you have to look. If you have tools and technology that's available to your team and it's not being used and it's not integrated, you have to ask yourself, is this worth training people on and having? Why am I paying for it? If the treadmill is going to be nothing more than a coat rack, then I suggest that you sell it and at least put some of your money back in your pocket, rather than looking at a treadmill that you're hanging your clothes on that's causing you resentment. So if you've got tools in your toolkit, and again, loan officers, managers, company owners, you really should insist, if you're paying money for these licenses, if you're paying money for having, for people to have access to it, you've got to monitor whether or not they're using the tools and that they've mastered the use of these tools. Because what's the sense of having it and paying for it if people aren't using that? And that's the thing, is understanding it's not just the cost of the tool, and it's not just the initial training of the tool that's important. It's understanding that over having that tool, the life of that tool is, are we tracking the use of the tool and the outcome from having used it? As always, I know these present a lot of questions, more than I can go into in a short blog post. So if you want to go deeper into this subject, if you have some questions about these things, just reach out. It's mike@imtcoaching.com, or message me below wherever it is that you're watching this video. Have yourselves a great day. We'll talk to you again next week. Take care.